April Fool's Day today, huh? I better watch out. Don't get fooled. When these guys
That's
call
not our
in,
purpose.
well, when these guys call in, we'll just fool them. Jana gon chilga, just what kishilalo.
Oh, yeah? Bristol.
Yeah. I don't know how to skin. I stand going to skin.
Further. Yeah. I'm from Crystal.
Still little.
Oh.
Good. You know, the Ashkeys? Beverly, McCurtain.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I know that family pretty well. Mr. Tahi,
Chairman,
is it on?
yes, it's on. Delegate Daniel, can you hear us?
Honorable Freeland, can you hear us? Anybody hear us? Yako?
Good morning, Chairman. Yes, we can hear you.
We'll go ahead and call this work session to order. My name is Rick Nez, Chair of RDC. It is currently 9:06. Hi, could you do roll call for the record, please?
Chair, members of RDC, this is roll call for the Resource and Development Committee work session with the Navajo Nation Department of Minerals for Friday, April 1st, 2022 at 9 a.m. Roll call. Honorable Ricky Nez.
Delegate Rick Nez is present.
Honorable Rick Nez is present. Honorable Thomas Walker Jr. Honorable Key Allen Begay Jr. Honorable Herman M. Daniels. Honorable Mark A. Friedland. Honorable Wilson C. Stewart Jr. Chairman, you have yourself available, but you don't need a quorum for this work session. However, I do see Herman Daniel on the call as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tahi. We're on invocation on the agenda. Let us go ahead and bow our heads and pray. Yaradi, ni thoughts of that deal. Nehitha nehitigan ka aganaho ara hon lo la honetsan. Olo yont eren hitigan leni. Nahachadan kesko. Nehemaron hijabits honor the hasit leo kon. Inna a kui chimpenda il betenda il tinla. Inna bethadet ehegi ba honetsan. El hojon ligehegi. And the Dutch na hui nada ba honetsan. Nde bet aron an tin behatet ego e kodo. I kahandlenas. Chana nit lego. Ashhord na hidigen leni hotza ben hisinto kodo yat e hopen nache. Unti kesto yelt hito. Ashasi hito yora hini nego nasi kahandledo lel. Ashhorden hen sikesto ni jebi hon le a kuiche. Yat e ho hini naro nitsen. Tada alskon ben hikichet lehgi ba ke nitsen hidigen leni a kuiche. Nihina nstahadloro kon he edon hichian hera destigo. Hera honit edon hichida haro. Ben hikrachetle and the tan hitch on the hadloron hachen the hadloni ba ke nitsen. Ashhoren hitkon lon hides kan legodo. A large do husband named the Koroshe in Hajin up button the needle let on Athens and Archogen husband hitting Lane a coyat out Lisby got Nate, Cossental to don't hand that the Yaston hand that the chief on hand not a husking. And the done that the neto con yo eats in at Ellen. Aro con Zilton Jonagodana at Alco Saho. The Aginto but Aroshin Tokon. Ben that needing hitching at nada hat loro con chilchin. Chill Tajon dan set up and is it nada hat lonigi con. Ne erhosen la con sedes art elnal glosh hadan la. And the Dutch osta hadadan la ro slaughter. Ton tail bins and zato ko e da hitigido. But then nego e hot hahoten la na hosta. And the Dashot Nas Nelo Johna Edo the account Ehna Eda Hatan La Aron za bigedon an ken gon hidden and nasta what a hot air on hidden need. Cobbage in hall just or called a hot egg ibn nacha. Air a house and dal kiddy bin nacha or nal shows of nacha air a house and what a hot air at the neneba el kitten la. And the corona master she or in the seat ego a han hit chon a whole long needs and gone and see castle. And how holy ash or a creature or your need air. Nachara hasthe zira nails honda ilzi but on the head needle ashore ne bait ein khanan elon khanadan akronas china hadi khayat eho ekhe art khocha kroshin tlanit lenigi nikhel khon loro le khon sagon cha job body and give nation Jesus Christ amen ache kro introduction ki dole shanant anor lenigi ada Honorable Vice Chair Walker, are you on the call? Honorable Daniels? Press star 6 to unmute. Honorable Freeland? Honorable Begay? Honorable Stewart is excused, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Chairman.
Hey, ashide halako. Rick Nazin, she hawasanan shla o zait hachin, bashish chain, sana bitin dash shado kia ani dash nalhot ait and then slido, San Juan chapter doy nasha, adonia. Pastago chapters vanash nishige hogback, said a calm dabadena. San Juan chasant manit and dabadena. Adone nahanzare a hoholiga ne nahanzar. Upper fruin do al kai holiga. Adon that is tosakari burnham. Ne comet is in the skis holiga. Ot ada visit or cannot in a roshin do visit a halnod so. Yat ain't hidden it or here are not staff. Ms. Chairmaya, thank you for bringing your staff together. You certainly have a team of people here, and I'm very impressed. So, Koroshi kitchen the Hadil Navadina. Hot end the Koro, Kajoshin, here had all just Koroshin and Bill.
Got a Shananda chairman there, so RDC members, all staff, like an affinity. On the arrest, I see no side, we should measure the case on affinity. Got a penalty to the Schnee. Are in the con. William Schemes here. Yeah, this is it. The Chanel. Wait a minute. Elvin, I did it. And funny, it's not this. These few issues, and they Peter McDonald's, that's all. No, this is Eve up there, not that. Never care on your car. Because about 80 to me, when I did, and again, chair last.
Right.
Freeland is on the call.
Honorable Freeland. Introduction. You wish to write.
Chairman, good morning, colleagues and staff, everyone on this call. Say Mark Freeland is here, although Senigi Tony Soro Kia Ani Isha, Sanjay Canada's chair, although Tana Bassation. I represent 8 chapters out here in Eastern Agency, Crown Point, although Nahadishki, Tehe Pesenti, White Rock, Lake Valley, Herpano, and Nayaze. Good morning to one and all, and of course, our staff. Happy Friday and happy Fool's Day. Let's have a good meeting, Santa. Thank you.
Koshila Kehesnant, Honorable Freeland for calling in. Honorable Daniels.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Good morning. My call dropped. I'm on the road to Scottsdale this morning for those to attend the broadband meeting with Delegate Kayla Begay. So, Herman Daniels Jr. ACC. I mean, the chief about the same as Scott Bow. That's another. I don't quite get cleaning. That should say. What's that? Men's clinical. Ojito, Shanto, Tabikin, Aaron, the Natane Banash, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Akushila Cash, Honorable Daniels. Thank you. Fields. Okay, Mr. Tahi.
Good morning, Chairman, members of RDC, Mr. Jeremiah, guests. My name is Rodney Tahi. I'm the Legislative Advisor for Resource and Development Committee. I'm Kiani and Senjikina, and I'm originally from Steamboat, Arizona. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you. From the Office of the President, Vice President, Ms. Clashen.
Good morning, my name is Teresita Clarkson, I'm with
From the Land Department, Mr. Halona.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Navajo Land Department. Real quick, there are restrooms right out the door. Those are occupied. Across the hall, there's two more. And those are occupied. Down at the end is our employee break room. There's a restroom there as well. Those are all occupied, and I don't know what to tell you. I'm Michael Owner, Department Director for the Navajo Land Department.
Yeah.
What I say, yeah, Harrison Billy in shit, auto, she, the message in it. So, this she name us, she, that's she out of it, and there's another. Jimmy told us, you know, and they, no, consider. So, check it out, Kanda, now, I'll be using that shit. I manage the service mining program and program manager, and I've been here for like 8 years. I hired most of these people here. Except for Krishna, he's been here longer than I have. We have a pretty good team of engineers and geologists and land experts. Hydrologists, and we have a pretty good team. They all brought a lot of experience in here, so there's quite a bit of experience in this room. I used to work for Mr. Zaman, but he retired, and now we have a new leader, Jeremiah, and she's just about as hard-nosed as Akhtar about getting primacy, so this is what this meeting's all about. We'll try and our best to enlighten anybody that's on the line and anybody that doesn't know about the program. Okay.
Good morning, Honorable Chairman Nez. Good morning, Honorable Delegates, and everyone on the call today. Thank you for joining the Minerals Department for our discussion on our Primacy Initiative today. I'm Rowena Jeremiah, the Director of Minerals Department. I'm Senjikina, born for Laguna in Spanish. I'm originally from Ganado, Arizona.
Thank you. Next.
Patricia Slee.
It is an honor. Take you over presenting that shit. Then my cake, I think that shot. The head cheating response for the genie, but the so that is the other two that genie that should know. The never copy issue with the shrimp quick is 7 years. You probably should get to the show then. Yeah.
My name is Carol Blankety.
My background in geology and Honorable Chairman Nez. My name is Lavina Rajan. Sorry. I work as the environment. I've worked in mining 5 years.
Morning, Chairman Nate. Members. And good morning to everybody in the Minerals Department. Are in the program. Master's degree. I'm a registered professional engineer. I'm a mining engineer and I have been in the industry for years. Like it's half-half. 17 years in India, both in coal mines, underground and surface both. Years, 12 years. So like the most of the work I do, like do code revision and code renewal. I also participate in the process conducted by the federal government, CIS and environmental effect. So, and I do hydrology too, and and the bond line. Very much.
What's your clan?
What is your clan?
What is your clan's?
Pardon me? Your clan?
Gurkha.
Nobody adopted you.
Where are you originally from?
Originally from Nepal.
Nepal?
Nepal.
That's where the highest mountain is.
Mount Everest.
Mount Everest, yeah, the highest peak in the world. But there are like, out of 10 highest peaks, the 10 out of, like 80% of highest peaks are in Nepal. So like, there are 8 highest peaks in the world.
You're the second person I met from Nepal.
Who was the other one?
He's a church member out in Dallas, Texas. He's from Nepal.
Okay.
Welcome to the great Navajo Nation.
Thank you, I've been here since last year.
He likes to eat lamb. He likes lamb. Yeah. Oh, nice. Welcome.
Good morning, Honorable Chairman Nez and everyone present. I'm Travis Begay, Tabayan Nishma, Shini Bashishchi, Todashini Dashache, Kvashche, Dashnet, Chanela. I am the Reclamation Specialist for the Surface Mining Program. I've been with it'll be 8 years this August. I graduated from University of New Mexico with a geology degree.
Morning, thank you. Yeah, Arnold, Ms. Yako?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, good morning, Yate, Bene, Chairman, Auto, members of the Resources and Development Committee. My name is Melinda Arviso Siako, Sitna Janine Shlon, Kia Ani Bashichin, Twitchini Dashichedo, Dashini Dashinele, Legislative Staff Assistant for the Office of the Speaker here in Winter Rock, Arizona. Thank you for having us on the call, and good morning.
Thank you, Ms. Siako. We do have Honorable Vice Chair Walker. Vice Chair Walker. Press *6. Okay, we'll go to Ms. Woody. Ms. Woody.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Oh, yes,
okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chair and RDC members. Good morning. Shea Teresa Woody and Shero Tabahan Shaw the Bethlehem in the Bashichin, Kiane Dashichedo Tina Jene Dashinale. And I'm originally from Steamboat and we get the other Nasha of Onage dance to see the good morning to all. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Woody. Ms. Khan.
Yes, good morning. Chairman Nez, Vice Chairman, Mr. Walker, Resources and Development Committee members, Finigi, Minerals Department and Land Department staffers. To those who have joined the call to present information, and welcome to all who are listening to today's conversation. Chairman Nez, Najonago, so does in Ben Hitch and Hainsey. Eba ahe ille. Che Mariana Khan da shijene. Done en shlinigi tuhiet lini nishle. Bashishchin yapet ahni. Da shichegi ya ashche. Senji Canada da shanale. Mr. Chair and members of the Resources and Development Committee, the Office of Legislative Counsel has a new attorney who has joined our office. She is Luia Hanalahni Henderson. Mr. Chair, she is on the line and ready to introduce herself. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Henderson. Ms. Henderson? Press *6.
Something happened there.
Okay, we'll come back to her. Honorable Vice Chair Walker. Okay, Ms. Springer.
Good morning, RDC Committee. Good morning, Navajo Department of Minerals. This is Heather Springer. I'm an legislative assistant with the Office of Legislative Services. Happy Friday, everybody.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Springer. Anybody on the call that wishes to introduce themselves? Anybody from the Department of Justice?
Good morning, everyone. This is April Quinn from DOJ.
Good morning, Ms. Quinn. Anybody else? And Hakoshila. On the agenda next, we have the purpose of our work session for the day. The Resource and Development Committee will be conducting this work session with the Navajo Nation Department of Minerals to discuss issues related to the department's Primacy initiative for its surface mining program. Number 3 on the agenda, we have presentations and discussions. First presentation will be by the Director of Minerals, Ms. Rowena Cheremiah, the discussion on federal government delegation of regulatory authority of surface coal mining and reclamation activities. Mr. Jeremiah, you and your staff have the floor.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman Nez, and honorable delegates that are on the call, everyone on the call for participating in this work session where the Minerals Department is here to provide an overview on primacy, on the Minerals Department's primacy initiative. And we are here to explain and educate and also solicit questions from everyone on what primacy is and what it does for not just the department, but for the Navajo Nation. Primacy is just a fancy word for delegation. What primacy is a delegation from the Office of Surface Mining and Reclamation and Enforcement, OSMRE, a delegation of certain functions to the Navajo Nation Surface Mining Program. The OSMRE currently regulates environmental effects of coal mining in the United States. And since the Navajo Nation has several coal mines, the regulation applies to these coal mines. Since 1982, the surface mining program has been in existence, and it was created under OSMRE for the sole purpose of obtaining primacy. So we've been working on this, learning what the regulations require of the department. We've been learning these processes since the 80s. The department has tried to obtain primacy before under the 23rd Navajo Nation Council, but it failed by 2 votes. So we're here again to present the primacy initiative, explain to everyone what it is, because that was what was the problem with why it failed in the prior Navajo Nation Council, was because at least one of the factors was we didn't educate enough. We didn't let everybody know what it was all about. So this morning, I'm going to ask William Skeet and Mr. Harrison Billy with the Surface Mining Program to go over a short presentation on what it's all about. And there's several presentations that we're going to go over. So if we could just hold the questions until after these short presentations, then we can go back to the slide where there were questions, or the topic where there were questions on, and answer the questions in that way. So, Mr. Skeet?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Jeremiah, for that. Honorable members of RDC, Mr. Bill Skeet will do the presentation, and afterwards we can open the floor for discussion. Mr. Skeet, you have the floor.
Chairman, yes, Resource Committee. Around the Queen, and Lineage Chairman, Ms. Chairman. Yeah, what are you going to have? DICB, when it inigi, it's in Bidanishi, as Annie, what it's Washington. President Carter, 1977, yata, there's Ani Bija, la Ibn Shahoya. Ako Ani, as Sharmaya, Yahati, the Hilikadol, yes, in any clinic, the Nebekaya Bakala, it's in Iskliji. It's in Sato, Bidanish, Lenaho, Kosokagi, the Ne, I don't know, Nota. I don't know, the Nebekaya at all, Yakini, Open partition land. They are just sausage in Bidanish, and they, Korea, but that they'll call. Ako, here, la, he got PowerPoint presentation, I think, got the hold of cost. I don't know, the program manager, Harrison Billy, those I thought you know, stand later, I hold you down. I need Mezana, I don't wish that. For the second slide. At Ile Epinache, Winston, what is our goal? Goal is that that the Navajo Nation Council provides an approval to the primacy of legislation. What is the outcome of the approval from the Navajo Nation Council? The approval would involve limited waiver sovereignty amenity and establish tribal primacy through the new Navajo Nation Code, Title 18. And Nebenachet Eya, not so Title 18. Next slide. Why primacy? But has on Kaya Bakabana, Kitchen Dinishigi. Take it is Idole. Kitchen Nishigi, Washington, they this year, Ajabananas, Yosin. Around the name Mishemaya Hati, the delegation of authority. A and she the nanny, clinic A and she. They listed all the top, but they eat all the nothing hold you so. Your Torah, what all that only look is a lot of state of New Mexico has state primacy. Surface Mining Act provides that opportunity for the state or any Indian tribe in the nation to maintain their own regulatory process subject to approval within the Department of Interior. What will be the outcome of the primacy? Not the sovereignty. We're going to expand Navajo Nation sovereignty by becoming the regulatory authority over the surface mining activity on Indian Navajo Nation land. Surface mining program will be treated like any other state programs and will receive 100% funding to maintain the operation of the program as we are and speak today. And aside from that funding, state primacy only received 50% funding. Any Indian entity in the United States is going to receive 100%, and that is the way it is within the Surface Mining Act related to Indian lands. The Minerals Department Surface Mining Program. What's our role? What's our task with the Minerals Surface Mining Program? It was created under a cooperative agreement with the Office of Surface Mining Reclamation and Enforcement under Title 5 of the Act, Mining Control and Reclamation Act, on the acronym MACRA. It operates under a grant, a federal grant, from the Office of Surface Mining Reclamation. 1980s, as Ms. Chermaya pointed out, the program was established in 1982. We also currently participate in joint inspections on all surface coal mine operations on the Navajo Nation with the Office of Surface Mining Reclamation Enforcement Inspectors on a monthly basis and quarterly basis. We also review permit revisions, existing surface coal mine operations, as well as renewals of the permit application packages that have been approved. Is by law have an opportunity to have 5-year successive renewals. The surface mining program is currently funded with 12 positions. We need to maintain a working relationship with the OSMRE. What is the Act of Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act? As I mentioned earlier, it was passed in 1977, signed by President Carter, and that applies to the mining activities in the whole United States, including Alaska. It was created to regulate surface coal mining and reclamation operations under Title V and to reclaim abandoned coal mines, which is Title IV, on a national level. Navajo Nation has an approval program under Title IV, abandoned coal mine operations, and this applies to all majority of the mining operations, even though it wasn't related to coal mine activity. In 2006, there was a public law that was passed to amend the MACRA of 1977. At sections 710, Subpart J, Subpart 1, Subpart A, to allow tribes to obtain whole or partial primacy. Also, any tribal entity must have an act, regulation, which is equivalent to or more stringent than the Act of 1977. And this is where we are, a working session and presentation of the primacy. It must be approved by the Secretary of Interior. And once it's approved, we are delegated regulatory authority and provide the regulatory process within Title 18 of the Navajo Tribal Code. What are our current responsibilities within the surface mining program? Or we achieve primacy. We have no enforcement authority. Federal agency is the sole regulatory authority for enforcement. And we will then conduct joint mandatory inspection on mines with the federal agency of OSMRE. We also review permit application package of renewals, mine plans, provide comments to OSM within a 30-day period time frame. We also participate in the public outreach process with the federal agencies in preparation of environmental documents, National Environmental Protection Policy of NEPA, or EIS. Once we get the approval of primacy, the Snp responsibilities would be to administer the regulatory program to oversee mining, reclamation, and exploration. We would have the enforcement authority to investigate, inspect, conduct hearings, issue case and decease orders. We would also be able to order suspension, revocation, or withholding of permit for failure to comply with the Navajo Nation Surface Mining Act. We also review and approve and disapprove reclamation permit applications that go through successive renewals or new permits. Administer cooperative agreements with the federal agency of OSMRE and other federal, state, and tribal agencies. We would be able to publish and promulgate rules and regulations, carry out the purpose and provisions of the Act. We would notify the federal agency OSMRE of potential criminal actions and recommend criminal penalties under the provisions of SMACRA. What are the SMACRA provisions related to limited waiver of sovereignty amenity? At present, Tribal Regulatory Authority, Section 710 of the Act, Subpart J, Subpart 1, Subpart A, in the public law 109-432 requires tribes waiver limited sovereign immunity. Purpose of the waiver is primarily for citizens' suit arising under Section 520 of the SMACRA Federal Act. The judicial review under Section 710, Subpart J4 of SMACRA. The lawsuit is not resolved within the Navajo Nation court system, and the lawsuit can be appealed through the federal district court process. And this has been working in relation to the Surface Mining Act. Navajo Mine has two separate permits. A tribal enterprise, Intech, is the owner, operator of the Navajo and the Amenity mine. And there was a public lawsuit filed against the permit Amenity renewal. And the court system recognized the sovereignty of Intech and ruled in favor of continuing to renew the permit for Amenity. So the law works and doable within our efforts for tribal sovereignty of the Navajo Nation. So here's a quick overview of the primacy that we are seeking. And if there are any questions within the committee of the resource committee or legislative office, DOJ, staff is here to respond to some of these specific questions. Thank you, Chairman Nez.
Thank you, Mr. Skeet. Baron Kitnausen, Lanky, the presentation. Shanant Anathenegi, honorable members of the Resources and Development Committee, do you have any questions or comments? Ms. Chermaya, would you like to add anything?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Honorable Chairman Nez. Out of this short presentation, what's important to get out of this are two things. That obtaining primacy requires the Navajo Nation to have its own set of regulations, and we refer this to the Act, that is equal or more stringent than the federal regulations. The Minerals Department already has these draft regulations in place, and they are equal to what the federal regulations currently state right now. The other thing that is of importance is the waiver of sovereign immunity. We would like to get any questions that anybody has regarding this waiver before this legislation gets to council, because we would like to explain it here, what it's all about. And as Mr. Skeet explained in the presentation, the waiver of sovereign immunity relates to citizen suits. So that's how it's worded. And it actually benefits the Navajo Nation. We are not giving anything away by having a waiver of sovereign immunity as it relates to citizen suits. The way we look at it is if there's a suit brought about by a citizen for any reason, and we are not able to resolve it within the Navajo Nation's court system, then we have the federal courts to go to. And this would be just defending the Navajo Nation's regulations that we will have enacted. It would be our own regulations that we're defending. It would be the federal government assisting us in supporting those regulations, supporting the appeal. So I really am inviting any questions that you have, because we're using this work session to prepare for the other committees that we have to go to, for going before NABI, going before the Navajo Nation Council. We want to be prepared. We want to have this passed. we're hoping to go before spring session, Navajo Nation Council spring session, but if not, that's okay. We can go before the summer session too. We gave this presentation to Honorable Delegate Stewart already because he anticipated that he wouldn't be able to participate in today's session. He did have really good questions that we were able to answer, and he has offered to sponsor this legislation. So as I understand it, his assistant is currently drafting up that legislation right now. If there's no questions on this little segment, we'll move forward to the next segment.
Thank you, Ms. Chairmaya. Honorable members of RDC, do you have any comments or questions? That does behind kitchen and kro ben kitna hasnegi kro yen hitod negi a large diki ha ila olia primacy ko kro olia kishi delegation olia dishi nan nishiki behas ani hatel nehegi ben ka konne Navajo Nation kuja Minerals Department do kuja smakrabidi ninigishi han sogoshi behas anigi bitziligi hadal nehtole benanish ido ye o be on nistole benigeti lejin hadas gedo hada gedgo and the tachit ashin bik and the gate reclamation do host era hadal negi at and the behas ani be hadat ehekishi at and that of course take on ago a large education area hadida Beshbahasa anashinti sarbe tanahadit ahegi primacy legislation olgehegi koron hitsala honorable stewart shimbahadal nehegi Asian aje Beshbahasa anye lat setole Hot end benakago na bitas sodole higidi sarbe tanahadit ahegi yaha approved limited waiver of sovereign immunity. The Kodo Behas Anigi Han Sogota Asian Ajabihit Zoto Benachin Naita Kitten Lindole Adon Data Adiki Behas Anigi Hadel Nehegi Benakago Ne Koroni Yaha Zimish Chermaya. Any tribal entity must have an regulation which is equal to or more stringent than the SMACRA of 1977. A kodihut abe has ani hadal nehegishin nage behas ani hadaliant eki behtedo endata apelate bexil dole stringent eki ahut ahadal neto le jono baka and that did a call presentation hitch not aben hitna hasnagishin hit datoshin il sostole ako kro art asako nike agat it ahin lenigi mes khan did a kro. Could you expound on the approval of the limited waiver of sovereign immunity?
Mr. Chair, I have not seen the request yet for the exact waiver language, but in a previous legislation that was done for a previous Navajo Nation Council, the legislation was written to go to the whole Navajo Nation Council because of the waiver of the language with regard to the waiver of sovereign immunity. And it is the Navajo Nation Council as a whole that needs to approve that particular provision. And the information that is given with regard to why the waiver of sovereign immunity is required is because the Navajo Nation would be agreeing to having disputes resolved outside of its own court system So if you will, as Ms. Jeremiah has said, any citizen suit would be brought within the Navajo Nation court system. And if there is an appeal from a decision from within the Navajo Nation court system, then it goes to the federal court system. That movement from the Navajo Nation court system to the federal court system would require a waiver of tribal sovereignty. For that reason, the approval must be provided and must be given by the whole Navajo Nation Council. I hope that is helpful, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Khan, for expounding on that. Waiver of sovereign immunity. Limited waiver of sovereign immunity. Limited nego, aro waiver nego, skisenel goshin, satobe has aniki, dene, be arahint egona yahdahuist eki, satnendol choslaton nepodol nil, a cockite ego da basa has nego honas akogota hada, gotanal chosiki, a hen el chosko. Yaha didiki konna bakat or lesiki behas ani enigo yaha at orchako ada hint age gold de konna yahada huist eki cho in the abega no johot ahitna halan hit in he not a lipenast egi benina hot asla de behas ani hadadil unlimited waiver of sovereign immunity konnigot yaha de hot ege ask kona din dinko betet in lebesh bahasa ana even now hot ashin betaron il chostolation and not seniki ere hot anhilchen arole la kwaki kodo ben hisna has nagido age shishin bikit it kinto ben nachen hilbe hosen do le khalan he already shigi han chagoshi oversight ninigi nan shiki na khasalati minerals na hit ata da annishiki do ar kozen hitan nedon harchen and dar nishiki de korosaratan hadit ahin hel keden linishin hetsele honorable stewart bahadelle hoshin aron the tan hitata shin il chosto aron nashin hodnet o let na rena bikiat kit do at hobesh bans an ya ichi o shin ye lat set o let ot ende koro ad large ben hitna han negishin jo bah na idit kito in Hitspehos and all this, Benega, Sto, Coron, Hitlahan, a cock, Are, Coros, Honorable Key Allen Begay, you have the floor.
Chairman, good morning, Yate. You can hear me, right?
Oh, good morning, Sitsila.
Okay. I apologize for not calling in earlier. I am hosting another meeting down in Phoenix here. Regarding broadband. When I was on Law and Order Committee the last term, and even before that, and I'm not that old, but I used to chair then the Judiciary Committee. Lady at Judiciary Committee, yeah, then has first term at service, the second term at Dangi, I was the chair of that committee. So this is one area that I really struggle to support waiving of a sovereign immunity. It's just the fact that court system, that's the way I see it. Whenever we say that we're going to waive our sovereignty just to go outside the court system. I mean, judicial system, Supreme Court. I mean, I sure like to have a further discussion, Chairman, that we get a report from the Navajo Nation Judicial Branch, specifically probably the Administrator and Chief Justice, of why we're kind of just chip away, or we do this to ourselves. Naval Nation Council, or court of o article a pa hon te to lesti khida sin da is so no da ko benna ko halet ala e so ka ko ya do lesto it ajo ki ti kha do lesto I will pose this question. I'll probably talk with my brother, not to just to get him on the spot for any responses, but I think this is a serious issue where a judicial court system should be acknowledged as effectively as any other court across the United States. Even the Law and Order Committee, it is required and may be required by the purpose of the surface mining that the Haninigito, Ado Koto. The thing is that Hasashi told you about that on if it's more friendly to the environment, if it's more friendly to the opposite of what the Navajo Nation intended to do, to unship a factor, we allow that to happen. When will we ever be able to utilize our court system where it's very effective as any other court across the United States or any states? Chairman, although it's required, it needs to be done. I mean, when is it that the whoever is really making this statement to say that you need to do this? No, I mean, as a sovereign nation, as a treaty tribe, when is it that people will continue to stop saying that? Okay, I mean, we got to go to them and see how they're going to do this, rather than just being okay. Waiver sovereignty body needs to be a chairman, so but nonetheless, I think but I always say, Chairman, that I really don't want to send this as a committee. If it's consensus, maybe I'll back off on it, but none at the moment. Of course, it doesn't make sense for me to tell the my community, my constituents, to say that these are not illegal. Linigim hinas to other these are he has army holno to other these are in here. The whole Supreme Court, but anyway, a question and other question go how to go into this audit so it all a chairman. So with that, let's going to go ahead and that's going to be more of a statement. A comment rather than getting response. But that's what I will be. I guess that will be an anticipation of a statement or comment that I'll be making when it comes before the RDC, the Navajo Committee, and then the Navajo Nation Council. Chairman, yeah.
Kushila, Honorable Begay, for your statement and your concerns with the tribal courts as they function and operate. Shananta, this past weekend we had a meeting in Albuquerque. And one of the subjects that were discussed was ash being hauled into where coal mines once existed and then covered up. It was passed by the Tribal Council in 1968 to approve that, which they did. If that was not in place and if there were stringent laws as this would require stringent laws related to coal mines, I don't know if there will ever be another coal mine on the Navajo Nation. behas ani kui adansat chosko. Yaha, these stringent laws would regulate how and probably should not bury ash in these pits. The information that we received on Saturday, Washington, that US EPA in Navajo Nation is going to be liable. Navajo Nation need Linigito eat and Appreciation Hades gate at 1968 on Nation Lind Arohostation has on Eliado Lahadon need a banana Holia. At has on upon at then do Shinkite Arabazilda. Arohostel de Shizigate US EPA has on it Abazilo de la. Even in Navajo Nation and Nego in here we're not liable. Heshe Basalado Lake qui harder than Nasta da Tony hit Arda da Hideganegi ba the ho out the height Ada. Do hot ego da Ada Chief Plateau Besselinko, but a Holoro Lake keep has on a ship and yahat. A cotide hol to go a obey Hitnahashnet or Lady Primacy and Neneki could behas ani de la rohan sagoshinal sources case in the lobby had it egik akodonas hodorne ahodat egit edo arohait arashin legislation igi hadaliago bakai da bakat khaidishi committee shi betkahone hadadon ahot ego sovereign immunity bakai gibini nachi dashin sto ahot akromas khan did aja Nhegat it I banan shide yosan go sabe dana hadit I hadid inigishi bakai da shin hot bakai do lit law and order tato the oversight judicial branch jibinina aja khalait it kwagi waiver of limited waiver of sovereign immunity ninigi la hait abin and the stokait ala ha bikidet o tinso but zil goti kon ne bakat na hastoko Arahint egona yahaquist it or let no the shinsto koroye ye na zindo les anasko that ahead of his ani adabzilo shinsto bigger the quid she hot ego es kehona ago since data limited waiver of sovereign immunity nenegi bespahasa an laye la slantla koros nal source daros and neligibene nach win so bansus case I hot end in July items case it's a little ebony nachin city case. Behas ani hot aban sis case to wins and I didn't nilgon I can eat can go hushed ale in. Aro koro, Miss Chermaya koro, Nanish Eda Yosan Lenido, Mr. Billy do, koro, Mr. Ski. I shan't end a shanty because it need credo, but it's eating dog cashing. I con the best man has anshin sat abohod later late out of Department of Justice and here got it I had a gillinicky shin sto sato what that in later late a koi hate ara a nasty do bahon ara do late do a hate ara a job best ego shin or nice a co Roch at Hachin hata hita gosado need kishin in the can de nasty Behas ani gishin gisipan yahat so ere bahatish situation and anat seniki saraza bahanana zihara. I'd like to give some time back over to Ms. Chermaya.
Thank you, Chairman Ez. Thank you, Honorable Kialan Begay, for your comments. These are the type of discussions that we want to have. These are the type of questions and comments that we need so that we can answer them, so we can provide you information. Just to reiterate what I had previously said, that this limited waiver of sovereign immunity only applies to citizen suits. The suits will be heard within our own court system. It's only if and when the suit cannot be resolved within our own Navajo Nation court system that it would go to the federal court system. And one of the reasons for this limited waiver of sovereign immunity, just besides what I just explained, is going back to the federal regulation, the Surface Mining and Reclamation Act of 1977. That law gave the authority for the regulation, inspection, and enforcement of surface coal mining and reclamation operations on lands, on federal lands, all lands. It created the Office of Surface Mining and Reclamation Enforcement. That's what we've referred to as the agency OSMRE. OSMRE, one of their primary functions is to create programs with states and tribes that will perform these responsibilities. So OSMRE creates these programs, and they have state programs that have been created following OSMRE, having OSMRE oversight. And they want to do the same thing for the Navajo Nation. The Navajo Nation would be the first tribe to have such a program. So this isn't something new. This is something that OSMRE, part of their responsibilities are to delegate these functions, teach these states and teach these tribes what to do. So since 1982, when the Navajo Nation's surface mining program was created, they have been training this program on how to oversee the regulation, inspection, and enforcement of the Navajo Nation's surface coal mining and reclamation activities. Although there is right now no coal, except for NTEC, no coal mine production activities going on, who's to say what's in the future? Who's to say after we're long and gone if there's going to be coal production? Even if there's not, there's still plenty of reclamation activities. We have the Navajo mine that will eventually stop producing and go into pure reclamation stage. We've got the McKinley mine that's in reclamation stage. We have the Kayenta mine and the Black Mesa mines. So we've got to think about those things. We will have 100% regulation enforcement over those activities. So back to where I'm trying to tie this limited waiver of sovereign immunity with what I just said. Let's say that the Navajo Nation obtains primacy, that this is approved. That doesn't mean that the federal agency is going to just give us 100% full authority and say, okay, Navajo Nation, you are now on your own. They want to ensure that it's a successful program. So they will still oversee the activities that we do. So this limited waiver of sovereign immunity also acts in that way, that if we should somehow not be able to resolve an issue through our court system, they will step in through the federal court system to apply to apply the Navajo Nation's regulations. So I just wanted to make that additional comment, and I hope that helps clarify this issue on the limited waiver of sovereign immunity.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chermaya. Shanandana Senegi Aro, Isnot Agia, Di Horonal Sos, oh, you should Darosonel. Asian box gonna Koro, Mr. Tahi is gonna put him in your box. But I would like to Koro, Adanek, Echiben Hitlahoshna Koro, Ms. Chermaya, Yen Hitchaha Zigish and Anot Senegi, Di Sarbetan Hadit, I had a Negi, Ben Yahat, Enegi Primacy, had Nenegi Eyaha, Navajo Nation. Koro, Appe, through its tribal sovereignty, data regulatory authority had Nenegi Basalado le Akoi federal government neki to bananas yoshanda do late unkidel ido late given yahat juk at hot ada gobanshalati the federal government. Akotida enactment hatnenegi shabetan hadit ahe will provide for the regulation in egonesh kako hait ae behis anibik eko onish. En the tanal kako hajon ego dondas kato late inspection hatnenegi add-on that the enforcement of surface coal mining and reclamation operations on Navajo Nation lands by the Navajo Minerals Department. Padon na nisponsalado le likidik at Navajo Nation Minerals Department do edi hot ayes nishto les benegeti primacy legislation hadalna ado anageda dik at the Osmir bedine Office of Surface Mining and Reclamation Enforcement. Kad epe ada goti bananish ish and vitsish kizbekaya Pakago Indian lands bedine ninigi. Akobe has ani shako anego yaha. An Indian tribe may apply for and obtain the approval of a tribal program under Section 503 regulation in whole or in part surface coal mining and reclamation operations on reservation land. Kadeti kodo anhit nchachinan handal nishige minerals department do dina nishpansalado le appe einige apply ido listo babe laato le de Washington the program section 503 gibe has ani benacha kododi be has anik anasko ye nishto le benegeki itela akotina prosecution and no sinigishi Mr. Tahi at Office of Legislative Service the shini hibasko national doles ate doska ado anahol jisho da shin hot up and yes anashi link obiga as a follow up before or during when the legislation is drafted. Ohon so got ein hilchen aro le toshan and atlas bahanana ziti de kodo Etten Goshe, Nas Nana Dole, Karomish Chermaya, we'll move along.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman Nez. We're going to go to the next presentation now. Yeah, William?
Okay.
Which one you gonna do? You gonna change it?
Yes, yes. Whichever one that you want to do next.
You have the floor.
Pagosila, Chairman Nez, Kela, Junon, Yang Shido, Naso Holdishido, Nanla Winzaniki, Ebikat Esti, do unneeded Hayara, and later 2016. He baseball Anna, Onanist is Nahos I, Walter Phelps. Resolution KD Oko Ada Federal District Court but says to the Indian court system what KD la Oko they don't not kin loan national judicial leave what K one Oko Ada Jonogo Nade kids to the key Olympic 23rd Council be me on it, so the Korea Nassau holds this still. Here, Change the program.
Okay, we're having a little bit of confusion here. So what comes up next is just the way that you presented to Delegate Stewart? There he has it. Okay, thank you.
I think we're having a little bit of.
Let's take a little break here, folks, and we'll be back.
Why don't we take a break? Yeah, let's take a little break.
Okay. So now we're gonna take a little break here, since it's April Fool's Day as well.
And they're not gonna
You guys take a
10-minute break, right?
Yes, that's fine.
They're gonna prepare some presentation for us, so we'll take a 10-minute break here. Bye. Welcome back. We're back now. We're going to go ahead and proceed at this time. Mr. Skeet, you have the floor.
Yeah, Lasha Chilla, Chairman Nez, though, Dyson, RDC committee and staff, mineral staff. On the PowerPoint presentation, we had some supplemental information that are specific for further information and understanding with the staff within the Resource Committee and future committee members of the Navajo Council, as well as the public when they become public notice in the near future. As Ms. Maya explained, new legislation, the 24th Council, Delegate Stewart has committed to be our sponsor. And the 23rd Council legislation that failed was 0367-18 related to primacy. January, it was introduced and failed. Majority. December 31st, 2018, it was reintroduced at the council floor. And it failed due to the lack of quorum of the council session. And as Ms. Meyer explained, that we were 2 votes shy. So now with the 24th Council, we have 16 new delegates. As my brother Keelan Begay explained, and questions related to sovereignty and amenity. And the discussion and debate, as Mr. Billy explained earlier, about the introduction in the year of 2018, there was a lot of questions from the council floor. Some didn't fully understand intent, and the question was posed about liability. But our effort, as Ms. Chairman explained, that we're going to go through a series of work sessions, able to explain to the legislative process, and to be able to gain acceptance. And due to the numerous technical and regulatory sections of the legislation that failed, we put out a draft executive summary. And this draft executive summary duplicates the failed legislation. The reason why we're using the original failed legislation is that over the past 10 years, as Ms. Sharma explained, that OSMRE has been involved with the program. They're also review our grant requests and have been successfully maintaining approval 100% to this date. Is that they've been heavily involved in the regulations being drafted that we currently have on hand. So it's just a matter of updating the new legislation number to year 2022, and with Delegate Stewart, and we'll have co-sponsors to supplement the legislation in the near future. Therefore, on this executive summary, there's section of any legislation has section 1, like findings. And the findings that we have identified on this future legislation for 0022 of the 24th Council is to be able to successfully approve the Navajo Nation Surface Mining Act, to assert the tribal sovereignty from the U.S. federal government, and that currently OSM regulates all aspects of regulation on Indian lands. Further, OSM carries out the requirements and cooperations with state and tribal entities, and that's maintaining a cooperative program, inspections jointly, reviews of permits, provisions as we currently are involved with, as well as the agencies of BLM that oversees the coal resource, and the BIA as a part of a trustee within the Indian programs throughout the Department of Interior. And so The emphasis again is that we have no regulatory authority. We will successfully maintain it once we get approval. And Section 2 of the legislation identifies the waiver of Navajo Nation sovereignty immunity with regards to the Navajo Surface Mining and Reclamation Act. And the limited waiver of sovereignty immunity is very specific to any federal program. It does not affect any other greater judicial system of the Navajo Nation sovereignty, as Chair Maya explained earlier. And just to give you an example, the ARPA fund with the state of New Mexico and the state of Arizona, there was legislation related to the behavioral health. Council successfully approved that recently so it's nothing new, and as a Navajo, Washington, anytime we're involved with federal funding like NHA, there was recent legislation to expand, delay, because NHA had to renew the federal government's oversight of NHA to be able to file a lawsuit against the nation, and that's been a part of the recent discussion with the Resource Committee. And further to waiver of sovereign immunity, as I explained before our break, and I'll cover that later on, but I just want to hit a highlight on that. In recognizing Navajo Nation sovereignty, Delegate Walter Phelps in the 23rd Council sponsored resolution to the Naval Committee to amend the Surface Mining Act 1977, Section 710 on Indian Land section. It will remove federal district court and replace it with Indian judicial system. So the government to government working relationship, the Navajo Nation and our office in Washington, D.C. to seek congressional sponsor to amend the act or to be able to, co-sponsor onto an existing act like what took place in 2016. It was related to a tax relief act, but it was success. Change and encourage the opportunity to have Navajo Indian tribes to become primacy or partial. So Section 2 is a requirement, and there's a specific section here that I discussed about Walter Phelps is called Exhibit C. It was a NABI resolution number NA 87-18. So that will continue to be a milestone and a goal to be able to change the act. Prior to changes, it would average 10 to 15 years, but now that surface coal mining activity, due to the renewable energy emphasis nationwide, there may be an opportunity to get the Surface Mining Act changed in less than 5 years. It remains to be seen. And again, the emphasis, as Ms. Charmaya mentioned about sovereign immunity, was related to the Act, Section 520. Navajo Surface Mining Reclamation, Section 2100 series identifies the citizen suit in there to duplicate the federal regulations. So everything's inclusive. Now we go to Section 2 of this draft executive summary that's pretty much specific to the enactment of Surface Mining Coal Mining Reclamation Act 18, Title 18 Navajo Nation Tribal Code, enacting a new section beginning in 1701, and that would be Chapter 17 of the Title 18 titled Navajo Nation Coal Surface Mining and Reclamation Act. And this is subject to approval from the Secretary of Interior once we complete our application And the Secretary of Interior has 60 days to approve or disapprove. Once it's approved, then we have to start promulgating regulations that will go to the Navajo Nation Resource and Development Committee to update Title 18 of the Navajo Nation Code that encompasses sections of the Minerals Department, and be able to maintain the administrative functions and compliance of the Act. Establishes the program managers and identifies responsibilities for publications of rules, as I mentioned in a PowerPoint earlier, and that if there were any individual that has an interest that may be adversely affected, it commits a civil action in the Navajo Nation District Court to compel compliance with this future Navajo Nation Reclamation Act. So it's similar to the federal regulation and act of SMACRA and OSMRE. So after exhausting all Navajo Nation remedies and civil action related to the Navajo regulatory program, an interested party may file a petition for review in the civil action of the United States Courts of Appeal. And as I mentioned in PowerPoint, the NTEC permit renewal of Penny Betty Mine was challenged on permit renewal, and the United States Court of Appeal ruled in favor of NTEC, which upheld the sovereignty of the tribal enterprise. Section 4 explains the effective date, highlights the effective date. So the effective date would coincide with the Secretary of Interior's approval of the Navajo Nation primacy. And it coincides with Title II of the Navajo Nation Code, Section 221, which makes it an official law of the Navajo Nation. Now we go into Section 5 of the proposed legislation for primacy. I mentioned Title II has to be updated with regulations. The Resource Committee is going to be able to approve regulations that would duplicate federal regulations of 30 CFR Part Section 700 through 816. Provisions of the Act which amend or adopt new sections of the Navajo Code shall be codified by the Office of the Legislative Council. So that goes to Title 18. Section 6 of the Executive Summary makes reference to saving clause. And it says, should any of this act be determined invalid by the Navajo Nation Supreme Court or the District Court of the Navajo Nation without an appeal to the Navajo Nation Supreme Court or any other court of competent jurisdiction, those portions of the act which are not determined invalid shall remain the law of the Navajo Nation. So this is very important, as Ms. Shermaya pointed out. We're still going to be going through oversight. It's just like an audit of the federal program, how we administer the Surface Mining Act of 1977 under the Navajo Nation's primacy. In addition to the executive summary, there are some key exhibits. Exhibit A, an executive review, which is all a part of the 164 review process. That will be a part of the exhibit that will be updated. And it will go through the tribal system, the judicial review, the final approval from the executive branch. Exhibit B, during the earlier promulgation of primacy, NABIs requested a legal analysis, how it relates to the Navajo Nation court system. So Exhibit B is exclusive to a legal analysis of this legislation that there is no conflict of the Navajo Nation law and is a policy decision of the Navajo Nation Council to approve this act into law for the regulatory program to be the regulatory authority. So our sovereignty, we've always protected, but again, it's just specific to that federal program. It has no implication to the greater Navajo Nation sovereignty that's in place as we speak today. Exhibit C, I mentioned Delegate here in the 23rd Council, Walter Phelps, Naval Committee resolution that was passed, NABIA 87-16, is to amend the MACRA to remove the provisions of the current 710, Subpart J, Subpart 4, Subpart A, allowing federal court, circuit court, review of the Navajo court system. So everything to this state has taken into account of our Navajo Nation sovereignty. Okay, now the next section is specific on the slide is of the Act of Congress 710 that relates to Indian lands. And this is to any tribe that I mentioned in the PowerPoint where they have coal resource that would like to seek primacy. The Crow Nation up in Montana have coal deposits and production in place. The Southern Ute have a current underground mine operations going on that's permitted, that's overseen by the federal agency. And the Navajo Nation has several operations and those in reclamation closure process, along with the Hopi tribe in the partition land of the Black Mesa coal mine operations. That is now has been closed since the Laughlin, Nevada power plant has been closed since December 2005. So Congress requested under the SMACRA Act of 710 to perform a study related to surface mining activities on Indian land. And the study was submitted to Congress, and the legislation were reviewed, and they ensured that the compliance of interim reclamation performance with the federal program, and there were specific dates to address all operating coal mines on Indian lands that were in operation since the late 60s through the enactment of the regulation of August 1977. And all of these sections were related to amending the permit to cover environmental performance standards, and inspections on those Indian lands were initiated. Subsequent to that, there's permanent programs that the operators had to follow through, and that's all been fulfillment of the federal act under the Section 710. So everything is current as we speak today. As coal mine is a heavily regulated entity under the MACRA program. So they also recognize the existing coal lease on the various tribal operations, and that the approval changes in terms and conditions of the lease. So any change required to subsection C and D of this subsection of 710 in terms of the condition of any coal lease on inland existed on August 3rd, 1960 shall require the approval of Secretary. So that's all been fulfilled by the current regulatory agency of OSMRE. So as far as participating tribes, Secretary at the time insisted to provide adequate participation of various Indian tribes that were affected by this study, and that they had initiated funding of $700,000 to authorize Section 710A to be reserved in that area. There was also a discussion of jurisdictional status. Secretary had to analyze and make recommendations regarding the judicial status of Indian lands outside the exterior boundaries of Indian reservation. This would refer to allottees in eastern portions of Navajo Nation. And provided that nothing in this act shall change the existing jurisdictions of Indian lands. So there's various definitions of Indian lands. And as of today, like McKinley Mine to the east, that's in majority of areas with allottees, the regulatory authority is the state of New Mexico Mining and Minerals Division. So there was a settlement and everything was defined during that promulgation of the state program in New Mexico. Then it talks about grants available under Section 710, and that the Secretary shall make grants to the tribes that I mentioned, Navajo, Hopi, Northern Cheyenne, the Crow tribes, to develop programs, as Ms. Sharon explained earlier, that the program began in the early 80s in 82. So the inception has been here. And it's not like something we had to do with other tribal program. We had to go to 638. This is available directly from the agency. So the Tribal Regulatory Authority of Subpart J of 710 is very key to this legislative process that as we speak today. And that we're going to follow the Act and the section that relates to state program. So we're seeking primacy under the federal regulations. Term of state program is going to be replaced to tribe, where we do application for the primacy, where it talks about specific the state program. I'm going to follow that format, but as according to the language of 710, it would be replaced with 710. I mean tribe, excuse me. So the sovereignty amenity, Subpart 3, to receive primacy regulatory authority under Section 504, Subpart E of the Act, an Indian tribe shall waiver sovereignty immunity for the purpose of Section 520, which is in the Act for citizens' participation and lawsuit, as mentioned by Ms. Sharmaya earlier in the opening statement of the program. Subpart 4 talks about the judicial review, the civil actions, and in general, as mentioned, after exhausting all tribal remedies with respect to a civil action arising under a tribal program approved under Section 504E of the Act, the Federal Act, an interested party may file or petition the judicial review of a civil action in the United States Circuit Court or the circuit in which the surface mining operation named in the petition is located. Scope of review, Part I of II, question of law. The United States Circuit Court shall review de novo any questions of law under clause small I. Subpart capital II, findings of facts. The United States Circuit Court shall review finding under clause subpart small I using a clearly erroneous standard. And it goes into subpart capital B of the criminal actions, and the U.S. District Court criminal activity of alleged have occurred. They entertain those specific issues, and then the grant. So there was a request of a report under grants that no later than 18 months after an act on which a tribal program is approved under the subsection of E of Section 504 of the Act, the Secretary submit an approved committee, Appropriation Committee of Congress, a report, develop cooperation with ethical Indian tribes on tribal program and include recommendations to Secretary on whether the primacy program under subsection should be expanded or included on Indian lands. But this has been finalized since 2006. The next portion is just a summary of the Navajo Nation limited waiver sovereignty that has been a part of the decision-making process within the Navajo Nation Council in previous sessions. And NHA, I mentioned, you know, that's been in existence of a federal program. There's been frequent renewal with the United States government under HUD program. That's where they get their primary grant. And that's been going on since NHA has been existing as we speak today. There are sovereignty immunity related to the Education Act in 2005, and that was within the education, and I believe that was something that related to 638. That's in the year of 2005, resolutions in that particular period of time. Then there was an amendment in 2007, Navajo Sovereignty Act, Title I, Navajo Nation Code, Section 554, and the Navajo Nation Arbitration Act, Title VII, Navajo Nation Code, Section 1108 and 1111. Then in 2007, approving unlimited waiver sovereignty was vetoed in January 2007. Subsequently, it was overridden. 2007, before the month ended, under Resolution BJA 04-07. So, our Operation Enterprise in south of Farmington, NAPI, had an approval for limited waiver sovereignty in 2006. And this relates to where farm equipment in excess of $100,000, $200,000 gets into a repo that allows that vendor to repo the equipment. The Navajo Nation EPA has a series of programs related to the Solid Waste Act under the Navajo Nation, under the federal EPA, the Air Act of EPA, the Clean Water Act of EPA. In addition, there was another portion of the Solid Waste Act under EPA. All of these have been granted to maintain the program within the Navajo Nation EPA as we speak today. And within Minerals Department, the audit program is maintained by the Navajo Nation audit program within Minerals. And it required a pass of a law allowing the federal court system to have oversight of the Navajo Nation court system decisions. And the Navajo Nation has similar provisions in the Navajo Minerals Audit Program. And I mentioned ARPA funding recently. Legislation 0241-21 was approved at the recent winter session on January 26, 2022. A limited waiver of sovereignty immunity with the New Mexico Medical Assistance Division provider participation program related to behavioral health. Similar legislation 0244-21, the Navajo Nation winter session approve on January 26th a limited waiver of sovereign immunity with the state of Arizona Healthcare Cost Containment System Provider Participation Program related to behavioral health. So, you know, the Navajo Nation has made decisive decisions to benefit the Navajo Nation as a greater whole and maintaining our sovereignty. Finally, I'd just like to cover the chronology of the Navajo Nation's involvement with the SMACRA. And SMACRA at the federal level started in August 3rd in 1977. In 1982, the federal agency OSM entered a cooperative agreement with the participating tribes under the Act, Navajo, Crow, Hopi tribes, and established a small office to begin to learn the process and get involved, since Congress at the time didn't recognize the coal-producing tribes that were paying a Reclamation Levy Act for each ton of coal produced. At the time was like 35 cents a ton. That built up, and that fund was like a piggy bank where Abandoned Mine Land Program nationwide utilized that fund to administer the program, and the Navajo Nation Abandoned Land Program is a part of that official agency that's run by our own Navajo Nation program. In 1984, Congress passed Public Law 100-71 allowing tribal primacy for AML program. So this was in 1984, and now we're talking about 2005 seeking primacy under Title V program. And it's very key and very important, as highlighted by Ms. Shermaya, that, you know, we have a team and we're going to be able to continue to pursue our efforts here. In 1986, the General Accounting Office recommended to House Committee on the Interior Insular Affairs that the tribal regulatory programs are capable and should be assessed. The track record is here. In 1987, OSM responded to the committee that the readiness of 3 tribes to assume primacy. OSM stated Navajo Nation was the most qualified and assumed primacy to control the surface coal mine reclamation. So the federal agencies recognize the capability of the Navajo Nation since 1987. In mid-May of 1988, OSM approved the Navajo Abandoned Mine Land Reclamation Program and associated Navajo AML funds to reclaim abandoned mines within the Navajo Nation. And this program continues to exist today since 1988 approval. And there was some funding discussed in 1989 for cooperative agreement, and that was coming to a cessation in 1989 because of the Department of Interior's abandoned the pursuance of tribal primacy. So this became a question. But in 1992, Congress passed the Energy Policy Act, and this facilitated amending Section 710 of the SMACRA Act, providing annual coal grants to the 4 owning tribes, and that allowed primacies or partial to Indian tribes. So December 20, 2006, President Bush signed the Tax Relief Act of 2006 that had an amendment that allows now Native American tribes the ability to obtain primacy from the U.S. Office of Surface Mining Reclamation Enforcement for the regulation of surface coal mining and reclamation activities on coal lands controlled by the tribe, Navajo Nation, Crow, Southern Ute, Hopi. In 2007, September, at the time, President Joe Shirley made a presentation testimony to U.S. Senate Committee on Energy and Natural Resource concerning Navajo Nation's position on the reauthorization of the Macro Act, Public Law 9487, was signed by President Carter. The beneficial use of AML funds and expansion of SAMACRA to allow the Navajo Nation the ability to regulate activities on Navajo land. Again, in the same year, in the fall 2007, at the time, DNR Director Arvin Trujillo provided testimony to the same committee, informing on the Navajo Nation's progress on implementing the SAMACRA amendments approved in December of 2006 regarding AML land program, and also put an emphasis the nation's efforts to obtain primacy over mining reclamation activities on Navajo reservation land. And now we're at 2022. So with the facts and our own resource capability and the direction that we're seeking in primacy, we'll be able to strengthen the Navajo Nation's sovereignty and support passage is going to be a milestone for the Navajo Nation. Thank you very much, Chairman Nez, Resource Committee, and audience in the reservation.
Thank you, Mr. Skeet, for the presentation. Arosh and Anna Klenige, honorable members of RDC, Koron Hitlahas Negi, Nal Chorsigishin, Latin Hipbox began and on Aroan Hidedos, Kahande Koroyan Hitlahas Negi, Slapah Naidos Kit. Do you have any comments or questions? None. Let me have a honorable Paul Begay. Introduce yourself, Shananda. Are you still on the call? Yes, I see you.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Chair, Brother Ricky Nez, members of the Resource and Development Committee. Delegate Paul Begay, she and we are there in a circle. This can get out to our bank of a team to cheat dog, could be Todo Tonelli. A slagoi partners and the has ango even the other back on the star for a hot and go for Fetish kitchen and engine. If it is that it or to the change the city. I don't care a national of the snow could there in engine. Go ahead, oh, Shaho, I guess, Chair. Thank you.
We also have on the call with us Honorable Vice Chair Walker. Vice Chair Walker.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. Other committee members, other colleagues that are with us on this call this morning, other the presenters, everyone that's there. So this is Thomas Walker from Western Navajo Agency. I represent Coal Mine, Cameron, Loop, Talani Lake, and Bird Springs chapters. I don't mention a she and be between the and that is Naldo Twatsani the check. The Koteko chairman, though, many members on his staff, so yeah, no. Chairman, the documents that you mentioned earlier, so we would expect to find that in our boxes, today or soon.
Thank you, Honorable Vice Chair Walker. Mr. Tahi will make copies and put them in your box today, perhaps this afternoon. Tahi?
The chair members of RDC, I email you the electronic versions of the documents now, and I will put the hard copies in your box once we're done with this meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Tahi. Honorable members of RDC, do you have any comments or questions? Atenya Hakoshila, Ms. Chairmaya.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman Nez, and thank you, everybody, for listening in on our discussion. I know that it's very difficult to follow what we're going through, especially when you're traveling to different areas for your meetings this afternoon. We are here to answer your questions, to go over the documents once you had a chance to take a look at the hard copies. Like I said earlier, that is our purpose, to solicit questions from everybody and to educate and to inform. Thank you to William Skeet. It's also difficult for us to go through this. There's a lot of information, but that's the only way that we're able to get you the information that you need to support us in obtaining primacy. I want to move on. This will be perhaps another 15 minutes that I require of your time. So OSMRE requires that the surface mining program have staff that are capable of overseeing any delegated function. The surface mining program, which is within the Minerals Department, has 11 technical staff. So the technical staff are geologists, principal hydrologists, mining engineers, environmental engineers, and inspectors who are experienced with such things as soils and plants. Everything that's needed to run the program today and to have primacy. As an example of some of the daily activities, I'm going to ask two of the staff, Travis Begay and Krishna Vascoda, to just quickly go over what they do in an inspection and what they do when permitting. So Travis, do you want to start?
Travis?
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Chairman Nez, everyone present, and those on the line. Just real briefly, just like what Rowena talked about inspections and permitting. My name is Travis Begay. I am the lead reclamation specialist for the surface mining program. And basically, as inspectors, one of our functions is that we currently, at the moment, we do assist OSMRE with their inspections of the surface coal mines on the Navajo Nation. There are several mines that we currently inspect. Those are Navajo Mine and Penabete, which are south of Fruitland in New Mexico. We also look at the McKinley Mine, which is just right here next to Window Rock, and then we also look at Kayenta and Black Mesa. Right now, quarterly, we do assist with one complete inspection every quarter and do two partials. And the difference between both of them is that for a complete inspection, we review everything. We look at documents. We look at records from the mine company. They present us with records such as like blast reports, impoundment inspection reports. We look at air quality, hydrology reports, any kind of records that they do submit to the regulatory authority. We review those at the mine and we view every operation that goes on the mine site, whether it's the active mining, where they're mining coal at, and as well as their reclamation activities. When it's a partial, we usually just go from one location of the mine to another, or we just concentrate on an item we may have missed during the complete inspection. And right now, each of the inspectors, all of us, we have to be familiar with each mine has a permit. It's known as the permit application package, so each of us has to be familiar with it. We also have to be familiar with the 30 CFR regulations. I believe everyone has a copy of it in their office. Usually before we go out on inspections, we usually we get in a schedule is usually submitted to us at the start of each quarter, and Mr. Krishna Baskota, he oversees the inspectors right now for our program. He assigns inspections to each of the mines on where we go during the quarter, and just prior to going on travel, we do fill out, we do follow the procedures such as filling out TAs, travel authorizations. Those are signed by the supervisor as well as the minerals department director. For overnight stays at the moment, due to the off-reservation travel restriction, we can't stay in Farmington at the moment, but we can stay overnight in Kayenta, and we usually stay at least close by to each of the mines, so that way we can get a head start on the inspection days with the inspectors. Just a real brief summary of what we do during a typical inspection. We appear at the mine site. We do meet with the mine representatives. They usually give us updates on their activities, from their mining operations to their community outreach programs that they're currently involved with. Just a quick example of which, like at Navajo mine, just recently they completed the what they call the CHIRP program, which is the community heating resource program, which is they give out coal to the local communities as well as the entire Navajo Nation. They do have educational programs that they're currently involved with, from which they usually involve they have students from the local schools come out and view, at least get an overview of some of their activities that they do at the mine. And they also have one example over at Navajo mine. They had uncovered some dinosaur fossils south of one of their pits, and so they invited some students to come out and kind of just show them how the way they excavate those fossils from the ground, and they usually had some paleontologists on site, so they usually have activities that they do with the local community. Then afterwards, we usually go out onto the mine site with one of the representatives. They show us the activities that are going on inside the active pits. See the coal being extracted, and it's hauled away on large equipment. They are hauled away to coal stockpiles, which we do look at those areas. We also look at their sediment controls, such as the ponds, stockpiles in the area. We also make sure that all of their sediment controls are in place, meaning there's no off-site disturbance. And then we also look at their reclamation areas as to how they're reclaiming the land. And I know that at Navajo mine, they recently updated their post mine topography, so they are upgrading the former areas that were reclaimed. They're making the drainages more natural out there. They have repaired a lot of the erosion problems that had developed over the years. So it will be a better product than it was before. So that's one thing I usually stress out to the operators. Usually when I go out there, that we would like to see a very good product out there, and that it's a good. We would like to return it back to the tribe eventually, to the people eventually. That's our overall goal there. Usually at the conclusion of each inspection, we have a closeout meeting. We do provide our observations to the staff that are there. We bring up our concerns, or we also give them praise too for the work that they're doing. Usually what I do, I usually provide praise on their ongoing reclamation activities, and as required after the end of each inspection, we do have to submit inspection reports. These are submitted to OSM. They're included with the OSMRA's inspectors reports and statements. So we do provide those. I did include a copy of that for you, Chairmaness, so you can look at what we usually submit to the OSM team up in Denver. And it usually just gives an update on what we encountered out in the field. And every once in a while, we do we make sure that all of the that the mine are following their what's stated in their permit, and as well as that they are following the regulations. And every once in a while, an enforcement action would have to be issued to the mine. The last enforcement action, or what we call NOV, that I assisted with back in 2017, this was for Navajo mine. This had to deal with the off-permit disturbance that they had up at their north facility near the power plant. So the OSM inspector had me look through the 30 CFR regulations to see which of the sections had been what had been violated out there by the mine operator, and I did provide my input, and I also assisted with the creation of the NOV itself, which we later submitted to the CEO of Intech for their signature. And so, other than that, we also do assist the as I've often said, that the inspection team, we are the eyes and ears for the permitting staff here in our program, and usually at the end of I also give updates after every inspection to the team here to let them know what's going on up at the mines and what are their future plans.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Begay. Krishna?
Chairman Nage, Honorable Chairman Nage, for being with us this morning. And thank you, honorable members of Research and Development Committee. And thank you, everybody who participated in this. In continuation of what Travis, my name is Krishna Vaskota, Senior Mining Engineer with the program. In continuation of what Travis taught, I want to input on what our program does in addition to inspection. So,
Question.
like, as William Skeet has already spoken about that, let me give just a background for a program. Yes, the Naval Surface Mining Program, it's currently the Office of the Surface Mining Reclamation and First OSMRE is the primary regulator. But if we get our primacy, then we will be the primary regulator. So here will be the difference. Secondly, MACRA is a primary federal law that regulates environmental effects of coal mining in the United States. But if we get the primacy, then Navajo Nation Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act will regulate the environmental effects of the surface mining in Navajo Nation. So to say that wherever there is OSMRE, then Navajo Nation Surface Mining Program will be taking over. So that is a sovereignty we'll be getting after if we get the primacy. So the SMACRA, the Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act, creates two programs. One is for regulating the active mining, Title V, that's our program, and other one is regulating abandoned mine land, Title IV, that's the AML program. So what we do, let me describe what we do. We participate in the joint mandatory inspection, OSMRE, and our program has to submit that report to OSMRE within 10 days of the last inspection. Secondly, the other important thing we do is that we review permit. So permit review is done on the renewals as well as the revisions. And this has to be submitted within 30 days of receiving the application. So that is a timeline for that. And our program also participates in a public outreach process with the federal agency. That is when we are preparing environmental impact statement as well as environmental assessment. We participate, and even we review or evaluate the environmental impact statement as well as environmental assessment and give our evaluation report to OSMRE. Permitting process. So as Mr. Pigay spoke about, inspection process, that's one part of what our program does. The permitting process is the other important branch of our program. So what happens is that OSMRE receives a permit revision or permit renewal application packet from the mining company. So if we get the primacy, then we'll be issuing. So it doesn't have to go through OSMRE. So we'll be getting directly to us. OSMRE reviews it. They will have to review it to find out if there is if that application is administratively complete or not. So after they find it administratively complete, then they send it to different agencies. Like first they will be sending us to Navajo Nation Surface Mining Program, and the next will be to BIA and the Navajo Regional Office, BLM, Farmington Office, Navajo Nation EPA, if it's applicable, and also Navajo Nation Fish and Wildlife for their comments, and the chapter house too. These materials are sent in pursuant of CFR 30 CFR 750-12B. So that is under, they have to send it because that is a consultation that OSMRE has to do with the agencies. That is a requirement under MACRA. So we, Navajo Navajo Nation surface mining staff, we review that package and submit our recommendation to OSMRE. So once we get our primacy, we don't have to submit a recommendation to OSMRE. So that is a sovereignty. So we'll be deciding by ourselves on what to do and what not to do. So OSMRE, after getting all the reports from all different agencies, they file it and they send the technical report to the respective agencies and the mining companies. If there is any problem with the report or if there is any deficiencies, then they send it back to the mining companies for review again. So let me give one example of permitting action, how the permitting action is done. I'm just giving an example of CMI. Like, for example, CMI submits an application to convert impoundment 5.1 and 5.2. I'm giving an example. That is a sedimentation pond, and they want it to convert it into a permanent pond. So in support of the post-mining land use, so we have a post-mine land use. So our post-mine land use is grazing and wildlife. So the design materials are submitted for review to Navajo Nation Surface Mining Program through OSMRE. So here OSMRE comes. So it can come to us directly, but as we don't have the primacy, so it goes via. So it is a long process too. We check myself, like for example, we check what happens to that, like the pond, whether it can be made permanent or not. So what we do is that the watershed area for the pond, we find out that whether the watershed area for the pond is reclaimed or not. And the area has to be seeded for at least 2 years so that there is no sedimentation. So, so what we find out is that the post-mine sediment yield should be always less than the pre-mine sediment yield. So if the post-mine sediment yield is more, then we cannot reclaim that pond. So and the pond has to demonstrate that it's fit for the permanent pond. So there are criteria for why the pond is fit for or how the pond is fit to convert it into permanent pond. So first of all, the major criteria are like the water quality of the pond has to comply with the intended use, like the intended use grazing or wildlife. So it has to comply. Or the safety, that pond should not be in the gradient. It has to have a proper access. And secondly, is that the pond, the most important the point is that the pond cannot degrade the receiving water. The quality and quantity cannot be degraded. So these are the things we see when we permit. This is just an example, one example of how the permitting process goes. And finally, the report is made and sent to OSMRE for the final decision. So once we get the primacy, so that we don't have to go through OSMRE for the final decision, we can decide by ourselves. So at the end, I urge the Honorable RDC Chairman and RDC members to support Navajo Nation Surface Mining Program primacy provision so that our program will be treated like any state program and determine for ourselves how we'll manage surface mining and reclamation activities. We have established that we have expertise and the process to handle this responsibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Here, Bashkuda, Mr. Bashkuda. Thank you. Get that all tranche. Hit my husband in that corner.
If you didn't
Certainly appreciate the presentation. It's given me a clear understanding of the purpose of why primacy is what we need to do within our own sovereign Navajo Nation. Ms. Jeremiah, anything you would like to add?
Thank you, Chairman Nez. I do not have anything to add at this point. I think we've put forth a lot of information, maybe a little too much information. I just want to thank everyone for listening and sharing their ideas. And I want to stress again that we are here to continue to give presentations, to continue to give information and answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jeremiah. Any comments or questions? Honorable members of RDC, any comments, questions? If not, I'm going to open the floor to folks here that would like to ask questions. Ms. Caution from the Office of the President, Vice President.
Jeremiah, for clarification,
Ms. Caution, could you come over here so they can hear your question on the call here?
sorry about that. Ms. Jeremiah, can you clarify that once privacy is achieved, OSMREs, how they're going to work with your department? What I'm seeing this is that they're basically eliminated and that it's making all the decisions.
Yes and no. They are not eliminated. OSMRE will always have some level of oversight. So initially, they will still have a lot of oversight, making sure that the program is operating, that they are doing what they need to do as required by our new tribal regulations, making sure that we have the staff that are required to do those, do the steps that are necessary under the regulations, and they will assist us in any way that is needed. So they will still be there, where right now they take the lead in all of the inspections, they take the lead in preparing the report and making contact with making official contact with the companies. We'll switch roles, where we'll take the lead and they'll follow us, whereas now we follow them. So they'll still have some oversight in what we do. And because they're the funding agency, they'll be providing 100% funding, they will still require that, from us, reports on what are your accomplishments, how are you accomplishing things, reports on progress, and that kind of thing that all federally funded programs are required to submit. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Ms. Caution. Subject to OSMIR oversight. So, anybody would like to ask a question? Mr. Halona?
Chairman Nez, thank you, and Resource Committee and colleagues and everybody that's here. Not really a question, just a comment, I guess, to help in your presentation aspects, would be to just address what are the challenges now without privacy, and when you do get privacy, how will that benefit the nation? I think it would really help a long way to answer a lot of the questions as to what you're trying to get to. You want to get the support and approval of primacy for your program, and well, actually for Navajo Nation, and how is that beneficial for the people if we do it. So I think if you just cut to the chase kind of, and just start out and say, we don't have primacy, and that's the result, this is what we're dealing with. And if we get it, this is how it's going to be beneficial and to the nation. Those are just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Alona, for your comments and questions. Ms. Chermaya, your response?
Thank you, Mike, very much. This is the type of feedback that we are needing as we move forward in trying to obtain primacy. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I hear none. Primacy delegation, like a delegation of authority, Washington, Navajo Nation Minerals Department, these are betan hadit Ahishin what Ahadat Nato Lesto, what ego Washington, yes, an Indian tribe may apply, Nela. Asian Ben, yet this application needs to be done. It is open to Navajo, Hopi, Northern Cheyenne, and Crow nations. Ako Navajo Nation, Gishin, Kodonihe, Asata. Adodif Belas, Nido Navajo Nation Council, limited waiver of sovereign immunity between Ninigi, do tenda netwadnata. Limited no han, so goshint yaha, waive alna netwadnapa has ani di sovereign immunity, Nini Arahwint, Egon Ecol, Dogona Yahit, Eco Goshin, Hodna Gibbaniga. Hot sa betan hadit Satoshin Bakat or late. I don't last di Bishmath, Anya last link of a Kedan, Secretary of Interior, Lenigation, Quapesto, Biji Ile, or Lano, Ile, or late. Arab Kedan Shady Navajo Nation program, 100% funding, she hot be nas don Nisto, be Unishikito, that Yada East Hatoye, that Anehiki. Experts than litigate position staff Kodoni Ms. Chermaya Yahodna hydrologist Adon the principal engineer no itka easy gishi Corona Sohan Sogodan Hape had a daily staff positions Gidon Hitchin hot abe bit itne but the snob has digishin to hot ad neto les Adoshin Nasko Shinti hot abe on nation's leader les the Koro Ben Hitna has Nagidon Hitsela, Honorable Wilson Stewart, Shake, Roti, Sarbetan, Hadit Aishin sponsor, Elet or Leto, Nehitaron, Il Solton, Nashi, Bell, Neto, Let, Hai Dishin, D. The Bishmans, but not no, you need just standing committees, Gishin, Hai Dishin, but Hadit, Ganshin, or Let. So, once a Goshe, Coron, Kissin, the Hasid, Net or Leto. Mr. Billy, would you like to add anything?
Not a lot. I guess one of the things that Mike just kind of mentioned is OSM, the kind of problems that we have right now. There really isn't a lot of problems that we have. We actually work with OSM really well. And during the 23rd Council, they even came out and provided testimony. And their testimony was really good. They are all for us getting primacy. So that's what we've been doing for the past, well, as long as Akhtar's been here. And so we're making another attempt. I mean, some of these things that I just brought up, that was the same roadblock that we ran into. But, yeah, I think Mr. Skeet did a good job of explaining this time around more about what we faced the last time. So I think, and then Mr. Chermaya has been pretty adamant and about pursuing this. So I feel pretty strongly about it. I think we get it. We can answer those questions in the next session's concerns. That's all I have.
Kushila, thank you, Mr. Billy, for that. I don't need Kro, Mr. Travis Begay, and Hasna Joy Dabanan, the Shadesh Ila, Ot Oshi, is Nana, Kator, inspection Diana Kedo, the inspection Giat, submitted Dal, Ila Dabanan, the Shadesh Ingot, Ela. Hot end the art on Spani, Yaki and Hidden a daily idol. Hot end the Satoe or Smirol, Gehigit at the Shinhakades idol, Nan Shida just on. Hot Elas and Anna Seneki, Sashba Hatin at another. Hakoshila, Joe, our recommendations is probably to have a follow up. We'll see what Honorable Wilson Stewart would like to request perhaps a follow-up meeting prior to having this legislation go through the committees. It would be a refresher course for all of us if we could gather again for a half a day in this room and have our colleagues be on the call and ask questions. So I certainly had a day of knowledge being dispersed to me. So I'm gonna go home and think about this as I drive. And I know some of my colleagues, I really do appreciate the work that you do. Honorable Begay traveling out to Phoenix, Arizona, to advocate on behalf of the great Navajo Nation as far as broadband. My colleagues, the RDC committee is always very, very, very busy. I was busy yesterday with about 4 meetings, and today I pretty much have 2. So I'm glad that our advisor has work to do on the 5th. That gives us time to take off and tend to our chapters as well. So I believe we're done. We're going to go ahead and adjourn and perhaps schedule a follow-up meeting. It is currently 11:50 a.m. Be safe out there. Take good care of yourself, your families, and may God bless each and every one of you. Thank you, Ms. Chermaya, your staff, Kadon Minerals, though, and Mr. Halona for being here, as well as Ms. Klashen, and thank you, Mr. Tahi. Thank you very much. You've always done a good job, and thank you for helping us. Ms. Yako, I don't hear that Ms. Khan puts us on. I thank you for getting on the call.